J Dilla, forever.
GD, flip another beat for me.
J Dilla.
JD, beats.
Everybody know Nujabes?
Nujabes now. Turntable. Big up my man, Nujabes. We make the beat knock. Track Nujabes, put it on wax. We out with Nujabes is my accomplice.
Like Pac, like Dilla, like Nujabes.
J Dilla and Nujabes. Both of them are in contention for the most influential music producers in history. Even though there is no record of them knowing about each other, their legacies are intertwined in an almost supernatural way. The most weird fact is that they were born on the exact same date, the 7th of February 1974, and passed away in the same month but in different years. J Dilla passed on February 2006 and Nujabes passed on February 2010. The other big connection is their influence over the lo-fi hip hop genre. They are considered the godfathers of this style of music, even though there is no hard evidence linking these two to lo-fi. The existing stories I found were heavily romanticized. But what is lo-fi? Lo-fi is a large music genre, but its hip-hop variant has become so successful that if you just say lo-fi, most will assume that you are talking about lo-fi hip-hop, which is a form of downtempo music that combines elements of hip-hop and chill-out music. It was also popularized in the 2010s on YouTube. I knew of this even before opening this Wikipedia page because I lived through it. But before we dive a bit deeper into the legacies of Dilla and Nujabes, and talk a bit about lo-fi to determine if they were in fact the godfathers of the genre, I need to talk about how YouTube pushed a borderline mainstream producer and a niche Japanese producer into legendary status. A perfect example of their influence is my own story. I started to listen to beats in 2011 because I thought that lyrics were too distracting when trying to study. From that point forward, I was also heavily immersed into basketball culture, so naturally I started to gravitate towards hip-hop. On 2013, during one of my many daily workouts, I stumbled upon De La Soul's Me, Myself, and I.
To be in daylight, it's just me, myself, and I.
The music video was being played at the gym, and the track has this nostalgia attached to it, like something that would be playing in the background during my childhood. Chasing that feeling, I went on YouTube later that day and ended up finding Stakes is High, produced by J Dilla. A discovery that, looking back now, completely changed the trajectory of my life. Basketball led me to De La Soul, which naturally made me find out about J Dilla, who opened my horizons to hip-hop in general. All these eras of rap, from Dilla all the way to Jay-Z and even Kendrick Lamar, were pretty much mainstream, but not mainstream enough to be considered internationally mainstream. As a Brazilian high schooler, I was naturally isolated from this predominantly black North American culture. So I needed an unorthodox avenue to consume this culture's music. That avenue was, and 10 years later still is, YouTube. After finding the instrumental version of Stakes is High, I noticed that there were a lot of beats that were getting as many views as the actual songs. So it became obvious to me that existed this huge audience on this ever-growing platform that simply liked to listen to beats. And two types of beat videos were becoming so successful that they ended up having a huge impact in the music industry. The first was sample-based beats with mostly boom-bap drums, starting with Dilla, Nujabes, and Madlib, and later on producers like Ninth Wonder, Flying Lotus, and Alchemist also finding success. The second style of videos was type beats, where unknown up-and-coming producers would upload their beats to YouTube using the name of an established artist as clickbait, or the name of a rising artist in order to ride their growing wave. Side note, I think I listened to type beats that were clickbaiting artists like Wiz Khalifa and A$AP Rocky before I had the chance to listen to one of their actual songs. Before moving on, I also need to mention channels that re-upload music. Channels like The Sound You Need and Chill Hop were majorly successful at the time, and their re-uploads going viral definitely had positive impact on the careers of guys like FKJ. Again, what I'm trying to showcase with all of this is that there was this hungry music audience on the second biggest website in the world. This must have inspired many producers to cater to this audience. And for those who are fans of Dilla and Nujabes, they didn't create lo-fi, but they brought this hyper niche genre into this huge audience, pushing lo-fi to the heights it has reached today. YouTube, being a free and easily accessible website, pushed Dilla to become timeless, with even his unreleased beats garnering millions of views across the world. YouTube, being a global website, helped Nujabes, a Japanese producer who started his career making Black North American music, achieve global notoriety. Both of their international success on YouTube and sadly their untimely passing, as it's often the case, pushed their artistry into legendary status and 100% paved the way for producers to go online and make a name for themselves. Before diving deeper into Dilla and Nujabes' story, a lot of articles mention Madlib's influence in the genre. Madlib is one of the few producers that share Dilla's rarefied air, but personally I never made the link between his work and lo-fi. I think Madlib's work on Mad Villain and his older beat tapes are more on the literal sense of lo-fi, which stands for low fidelity. The feel and the roughness of the sound is the most noticeable attribute, but this wasn't an artistic choice. It was simply the result of the gear they had available to them at the time. However, the nostalgia for this sound has become so prevalent nowadays that companies are making new gear inspired by the old hardware, and in some cases straight up re-releasing the old equipment. Subscribe and check the Patreon so I can afford a SP404. But nowadays, when you talk about lo-fi, the term is linked to a vibe and a feel. Producers still try to emulate a bit of that roughness and low fidelity, but the most noticeable aspect of lo-fi today is the mood. Regardless if lo-fi hip-hop is inspired by Madlib's work, I don't mind including Madlib and giving him props anywhere I can. Now let's do a quick overview of the early, mid, and late stages of Dilla and Nujabes' career and how they both pioneered music movements that may have directly impacted lo-fi.
From the one they call JD. Word up.
Dilla came from a very musical family. He was the son of an opera singer and jazz bassist. His mother stated that he could match pitch-perfect harmony before he even learned how to speak. In 1992, while Dilla was in high school, Detroit music legend and Fiddler from the Parliament Funkadelics lent Dilla an Akai MPC.
Is that you were basically like a mentor to the young J Dilla. Because you taught him like the basics of MPC, how to use it?
That's right. I remember like it was yesterday because I had purchased the MPC from a demo deal that I got from Polygram Records, and I got an MPC 60, and he came to the house with the rest of the rappers that wanted to record from my neighborhood. They were all kids in high school, 16, 17. So I remember distinctly that I told them that I couldn't make the beats because I didn't have that much time. So I could help them, but they needed someone who could be more creative in the process for them to work as a unit together. And they said, oh, that's cool. We have James. When they brought James, he showed me how he had sampled from cassette tape to cassette tape, overdub a cassette tape, overdub on another cassette tape, overdub a beat on another cassette tape. It was amazing. So I said, this is amazing. I don't know how you're doing this. I said, bring me the samples and we're gonna make them from the MPC. But what was amazing was that Dilla heard everything. He heard the intro, the verse, the chorus, the vamp, everything. It was all in the arrangement, and all the samples were different for one song. So he was a genius, and all the samples were relative in key to each other. So he was already a genius when he came to my house. All he needed to know was the technical aspect of the machine, and once he learned that, which he came to my house just about every day after that, he was amazing.
Like Amp mentioned, before the MPC, Dilla produced by overlapping cassette tapes, something quite complex that he did with ease due to his ability to seamlessly match the keys of different samples. His genius would go even a step further. Dilla would open cassette tapes, mess with the screws in order to change the tempo of whatever he was trying to sample. But now with the MPC, Dilla found the equipment his career would become synonymous with. Dilla's production ability helped birth one of hip-hop's most legendary groups, Slum Village. The group was founded by rappers Batim and T3, with Dilla on the beats. The three of them grew up together in the Conant Gardens neighborhood of Detroit. Even though they only recorded their first project, Fantastic Volume 1, in 1996, the group was already making waves through the underground Detroit music scene.
What time are we leaving here?
We'll tell y'all coming back here.
Leaving and coming back, so I know how much time I got to do this.
This one of me, that's the Korean man. This is my man by 10 right here. I gotta introduce one more member of the group. You know what I'm saying? That's my man J Dilla.
Regardless of the underground hype, success in the music industry is not guaranteed. Dilla's talent needed a spotlight that would come in 1994 through Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest. They were one of the performers at Lollapalooza and shared the festival lineup with Funkadelics, which created a perfect opportunity for Amp to meet Q-Tip. In an interview for the Netflix documentary Hip Hop Evolution, Q-Tip says that he was approached by Amp, who mentioned, "I can't wait for the festival to make it to Detroit. I got this brother who you need to meet." When they finally got to Detroit, Amp brought Dilla to the tour bus, and even though Dilla was shy and couldn't say much, he was excited because he was able to give Q-Tip his demo tape of Slum Village.
Then later, I'm listening to this shit in the back of the bus with True Goy. I was like, listen to this shit. This shit is called Slum Village. So he's like, yo, this shit is ill. I was like, it's ill, right? I'm not bugging, right? He's like, yo, nigga, this shit is ill. Who's doing the beats?
After linking up with Q-Tip and the Tribe Called Quest, J Dilla experienced a meteoric rise.
I played it for Questlove, Common, Farside, and I would just be talking about him to everybody. You gotta hit, you gotta hit.
By the late 90s, Dilla was already a well-known hip-hop prospect. He had a string of singles and remixes to his name and had done work on projects with legends like Janet Jackson, Farside, Della Soul, Busta Rhymes, and Q-Tip, among others. In 1995, he was invited to become a member of a production team known as the Ummah. The group produced the 4th and 5th Tribe Called Quest studio albums, as well as a number of hits for R&B and hip-hop musicians. Still in the late 90s, Dilla would also partake in another legendary collective, the neo-soul group Soulquarians. Dilla was at the right place at the right time with the right skill set. Even though hip-hop was created in New York during the 70s, its golden age was in the 90s, with sampling being the main form of beat making. As Dilla came into his own as a producer, hip-hop was coming to its own as a genre. Dilla's story may portray him as this genius, but don't think his skill came without some serious hard work. Dilla spent the late 80s and most of the 90s in a studio basement, relentlessly sharpening his production ability. This quote by DJ House Shoes sums it up. "I miss that basement. That basement is the birthplace of so many musical ideas. That was the center for the Detroit movement in hip-hop. In there, Dilla conjured up the magical alchemy that gave birth to his revolutionary approach to hip-hop production. Dilla had legends step into that basement, from Common to D'Angelo, Erykah Badu, and even one of his idols, Pete Rock. While by the mid to late 90s, Dilla was already an established producer, in the other side of the world, another producer who was also inspired by the likes of Pete Rock was about to embark on his own production journey. The story of Nujabes is one that took extensive research. Out of everything I've read, and I read a lot, only this article feels like it has concrete information. Shout out to the writer Jeff Kim and the collaborators, especially FaZe Rock. Seba was a music fanatic that started his career in the business side of it. He owned Guinness Records, a record shop in Shibuya that would later on in 1998 expand into the independent record label Hydeout Productions. His store was different due to its niche collection of records. According to FaZe Rock, one of Nujabes' closest friends, the records were 60% underground hip-hop and 40% stuff you'd sample. Nujabes wasn't fond of commercial hip-hop. If he wasn't DJ Premier, 5Ds, or someone like Pete Rock, he wasn't having it. During that time, there were a lot of successful record shops. Guinness Records was the hip-hop shop. The success of Guinness Records and the opening of Hydeout Productions made the store building not only a hub for music listeners, but also music makers. Being surrounded by talent may have been what pushed Nujabes to finally start producing. As anyone who worked closely with June will tell you, he was very much a student of hip-hop and took influence from those in his circle extensively in order to craft and refine his own sound. These close relationships were a large part of what shaped the sounds music listeners enjoy still today. Nujabes' style took a few years to develop, but his success did not. Although his production skill was still in its infancy, his business expertise helped him experience a quick rise in popularity. FaZe Rock recalls a story that perfectly illustrates Nujabes' creative marketing. I think Nujabes did a Nas bootleg of One Love. He would then take that, press it onto vinyl, then throw it in the Nas bin. So people that would be looking for Nas, who was one of the top artists at the time, would stumble upon this strange record and think, who is Nujabes? Not knowing that it was actually the owner of the store. Crazy hustle. Tokyo is tens of millions of people, so lots of customers moving through the shop, and he did really well. I learned the hustle from him. I call this physical clickbait. Still in 1998, Seba had released the cassette tape Sweet Sticky Thing. It was the first full-length piece of work he did under the alias Nujabes. Even more impactful than his ability to market himself was his outstanding ability to find collaborators. Like I mentioned before, Nujabes started his career making hip-hop, a black North American genre, even though he would go on to work with Japanese legends like Uyama Hiroto and Shingo too. It was obvious that he needed to expand overseas to maximize his potential. He was acutely aware of the possible opportunities around him. He was then able to maximize these opportunities in the most straightforward manner. He would just make phone calls, international phone calls. In the 90s, Nujabes got in contact with Virginia rapper Stanley Substantial Robinson through one of his employees who had gone to college in the United States. He asked if there were any underground rappers in New York that he should know about. After being shown an old mixtape from Substantial, he was impressed enough to ask for his phone number. He then went on to call Substantial out of the blue. Sub thought that he was being pranked due to Nujabes' thick accent, but thankfully he didn't hang up, because in 1999, after being sent some beats and doing some demos, he ended up signing a contract with Nujabes' production company, and shortly after was flown out to Japan to record projects in person. Another common collaborator was Funky DL, a respected jazz hop artist and curator, known for his jazz-infused mixes and big contributions to the UK music scene. DL expanded his reach by using UK exporters to distribute his vinyl records worldwide. One prominent Japanese importer and avid collector of DL's music was Guinness Records. Nujabes found DL's phone number in one of the boxes, and then he proceeded to spam call his phone number. After a while, being persistent paid off, and Nujabes was finally able to link up with DL. They formed a relationship so strong that DL played a huge role in finishing Spiritual State, Nujabes' posthumous album. Here's DL commenting on Nujabes' creative and business approach. Among the most useful information learned from Jun along their journey was his approach to the business side of Japan's music industry. As the owner of a vinyl shop, Jun knew how to move music very well and kept up with trends daily to stay ahead of competitors, researching what was hot or not. Aesthetic of both business and music played a large part into Jun's formulaic approach. Contrary to Dilla, Nujabes' story doesn't portray him like he was destined to become this legendary producer. But genius or not, both of them had to put in the work. Other than being a sponge to the influence and the knowledge immediately around him, Nujabes sought after more ways to improve. In 2001, he participated in the Digital Signaling Processing Workshop of Japan, an intense 5-day summer workshop which covered algorithms and techniques used for signal and sound processing. Since the start of his production journey in 1998, Nujabes was always looking into ways to improve his skills, and 5 years later, he was about to collect the fruits of his labor, because in 2003, he released Metaphorical music.
Hey, you can call me on your mobile phone. I grab a pen, a sheet of paper, write a letter at your home.
Metaphorical Music is a fan favorite and perhaps the most well-known album of Nujabes. The production of Metaphorical Music is referenced by many hip-hop heads as one of the few pinnacles of modern low fidelity and jazz hop. Far from any sort of cliche and able to hone in on a very specific vibe. Even though the project wasn't an instant hit, it contains some of Jun's most iconic songs, those with cult-like following that have been spread internationally following the airing of the anime Samurai Champloo. One of these tracks is Beat Laments the World. The track is often confused with the outro song of Samurai Champloo, Shiki no Uta. For the anime, they interpolated the sample of Beat Laments the World with the assistance of Japanese legend Uyama Hiroto. On 2004, Shinichiro Watanabe, the creator of the critically acclaimed anime Cowboy Bebop, was working on his next series. Bebop was a fusion of jazz and space cowboys, and Watanabe wanted his next project to be a combination of Edo period Japan and hip-hop. Watanabe was friends with Tosachi. They worked together on the music for the final episode of Cowboy Bebop. Whenever they were discussing the music for Samurai Champloo, Nujabes was the first name which came to mind. However, Nujabes was not about to embark on this journey on his own. Nujabes was a huge fan of American producer Fat John, and he suggested Watanabe reached out to him so they could work together. This original soundtrack, produced by Fat John, Force of Nature, and Nujabes, was so remarkable that now it is considered one of the greatest OSTs ever. For many fans, it was their first experience with hip-hop. A lot of the new generation people associated with the modern lo-fi movement credit this very anime, specifically the two main soundtracks, Departure and Impressions, as their first taste of hip-hop. The chilled aesthetic that dominates the OST is far from what mainstream hip-hop was at the time, but that actually might have been what made it more appealing to a wider audience. A sound that was much easier to digest, often without lyrics. This legion of new fans went on to research the makers of the OST, thus throwing this huge spotlight on Fat John, Nujabes, and Force of Nature. This fresh attention elevated Nujabes' previous work and made fans excited for what was to come. Thankfully, he was prepared for the spotlight. 2 years after the release of Metaphorical music, and a year after Samurai Champloo began to air, Nujabes released Modal Soul, his second full-length album. The project displays Nujabes' noticeable improvement as a producer. This development is often credited to Fat John and the impact he had on Nujabes following their collaboration on Samurai Champloo. This quote by FaZe Rock summarizes it. They were doing that project together, so they ended up in the studio together for a little while. You get a different Nujabes after that, in my opinion. To me, it's like night and day. After that period, his music got way better, a lot more musical, especially when he started to collaborate with Uyama Hiroto. Hiroto worked very closely with Jun for years. A lot of Modal Soul is Nujabes and Hiroto. A lot of the later stuff is also if you pay attention. I love that era of his music when he started to incorporate Hiroto's playing into his tracks. I'm a big Uyama Hiroto fan. The later trips I had with June, he was starting to play more instruments, trumpet and flute, which is another Fat John influence, I think. After Modal Soul and towards the end of 2007, Nujabes released Hydeout Productions' second collections. It was the last official album he released while he was alive.
But it seems like it isn't in the cards for us.
Let that big light tell you what time it is, you know what I'm saying? Nighttime, moonlight, sunshine, stars stay bright like a filament's first night. That living legend, right just like the number 7. I had to walk through hell just to get to heaven. My weapons are microphone.
In the project, Nujabes dove deeper than ever into that moody and atmospheric sound. The project was released still in the midst of Samurai Champloo's fan wave, and at that time, Nujabes' music was also starting to blow up on YouTube, thus cementing his international appeal. Okay, let's finish this off with lo-fi and the connection between Dilla and Nujabes. The previously mentioned influence Metaphorical music had on lo-fi and the emotions present in Hydeout Productions' second collection display a strong link between Nujabes' work and modern lo-fi. Regardless of that, Nujabes' collaborators say that even though those who say he influenced the current wave of lo-fi aren't wrong, there is some misinterpretation. There are a lot of great examples of where lo-fi came from than just Nujabes or Dilla. Many artists were already making this style of music before Nujabes and Dilla came along to popularize it on YouTube. Therefore, they definitely didn't create the genre, and I don't think they would even claim themselves as lo-fi hip-hop producers if they were alive today. For Nujabes, after 2007, he took a break from production. During this time, he was looking into ways of making happier and more uplifting music. The shift was noticeable even before his break, since Nujabes was already experimenting making dance and house music, using 4-on-the-floor kick patterns on tracks like Worlds and Rhapsody. As for Dilla, it is very difficult to imagine that he would be okay being pigeonholed into one genre. He even renounced the conscientious music maker label that came with his collaborations with Tribe. And in the later parts of his career, Dilla tried very hard to make his name stand by itself, instead of it being synonymous with groups like the Ummah. Dilla was always innovating and pushing the boundaries of what a producer could and should do. Comparing the neo-soul work he did with the Soulquarians with the later beat tapes like Donuts, the feel and emotion are present in both, but Dilla's later work is filled with experimental cuts that are a bit jarring to listen to, even though it is some of my favorite stuff from him.
Shine, that sparkling beam. The name of the game is the light works.
So the connection between them and lo-fi is not as evident as every online article suggests. Even on the production side of it, oversimplifying current lo-fi, it is finger drumming over YouTube rips of old jazz songs, or like I call it, jazz for millennials. But I believe that this lo-fi formula can be credited to a combination of Dilla drums and Nujabes melodies, but also a bit of Dilla melodies as well. Early on, Nujabes was criticized by Phase Rock and Fat John because his drums were quantized. He lacked swing, which for them at the time was a cardinal sin. Nujabes would grow out of this phase. A clear example again is World's End Rhapsody. As you can see, its 4 on the floor kick pattern isn't perfectly on beat. Nonetheless, like I said, I don't think lo-fi producers were necessarily inspired by Nujabes' drums, but they certainly were inspired by his melodies, his sample selection, and the emotion that they carry. As for Dilla, they 100% took his swing. Dilla humanized the MPC, taking the finger drumming pioneered by the likes of beat rock to the extreme. There is more concrete evidence of the connection between lo-fi and Nujabes' sound compared to Dilla's. Regardless, it is hard to listen to his neo-soul work and beats like Trashy, Dreamy, and Purple and not see the impact that they may have had on lo-fi. For as all over the place Dilla's sampling was throughout his career, his chiller beats can put you on a trance, hypnotizing you in a way that you can listen to the same beat on a loop for countless hours. On YouTube, they even call this homework edits. I spent my whole college career listening to them while I was studying and doing essays. By the time they passed away, both of them had moved past this sound. However, the impact that era of their music had can still be felt today, over a decade later. It was a beautiful time on YouTube prior to the late 2010s. Before Spotify and even before SoundCloud, YouTube was the best place to listen to music for free while discovering new music through what it felt like an incredible algorithm. Sadly, this isn't the case anymore, since you hardly see beats and underground music on your recommended page, and since YouTube doesn't want you to use their video platform as a music app. But I'm gonna leave that topic for another video. Now finally, the connection between Dilla and Nujabes. Even though their birthdays and the life they led created this weird connection, I didn't think they knew about each other when I first started this video. But now I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't have known about each other. Substantial said that June was always digging for new music, and he was a huge Dilla fan, and it seems obvious that he would be. Dilla was already making waves in the music scene by the time Nujabes first started producing, and because he worked on the business side of music, he was always digging for up-and-coming artists. He would then, of course, stumble upon Dilla's work. As for Dilla knowing about Nujabes, there is the J Loves Japan tape, which may suggest that he may have been more tapped into Japan's music scene than one may think, but the evidence I like the most is that he was featured in a beat tape with Force of Nature, the same Force of Nature that would go on to work with Nujabes on Samurai Champloo's OST. I'm still not super confident about that though, because they didn't collab directly on a track. Their works were simply packaged together on a beat tape, and that tape was released on 2002, so prior to Samurai Champloo's OST. But that is it. I was struggling to find a way to conclude this video since it has been such a long process. I had the idea for this video over a year ago and have been working on it on and off for the last 6 to 8 months. It all started with this big idea that I had that got split into 2 ideas because I kept doing these long tangents while I was writing the script, and then one of these tangents got split into 2 new ideas, and one of these ideas became this video. The whole process was exhausting and also very challenging, so please consider subscribing if you made it this far. But more important is what I think the moral of the story is: what those you inspire can do, or more broadly, inspiration. This was way more about what those who were inspired by Dilla and Nujabes went on to create than what Dilla and Nujabes created themselves. If this video was solely about them, I could have gone way deeper into their stories. But let me get personal for a second. I did an insane amount of research into Dilla and Nujabes stories, but still I feel no attachment to them as individuals. My attachment is towards their art, and that is what I will carry with me as a creator. The whole journey on YouTube so far has been about humbling myself, understanding that I won't improve and evolve into what I ultimately want to be if I just sit there and produce. I needed to take a step back from creating to analyze and study the music that makes me want to make music. And I've done that. Over 200 sample breakdowns that helped me set the foundation for this YouTube channel, and over 100 templates of track breakdowns that I am polishing to try to post weekly on my Patreon to try to grow it. I think I've done enough. I did my research, paid my dues towards my inspirations, and have developed the fundamentals. But in the last 3 years, I've become a pro at analyzing music instead of creating it. So now it's time to slow down the content, slow down the analysis and studies, sample breakdowns, and try to use all that I've learned from my inspirations to make some cool music.